On February 2nd, 1959, in the Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia, 9 experienced hikers set off on what should have been a routine expedition. 3 weeks later, search teams discovered their tent, torn open from the inside. Their bodies were scattered across the frozen mountain. What makes this the most unsettling unsolved mystery in history is that they fled into minus 30-degree weather, half naked and in complete terror, running from something inside their tent. Some had severe internal injuries as if they had been struck by a car, but there were no external wounds. One victim was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her skull. Their clothes showed signs of radiation. The last photograph on their camera captured a strange glowing orb in the night sky. This is the DYATLOV Pass incident, and I will share every disturbing detail from the beginning. On January 23, 1959, in Sverdlovsk, Soviet Russia, 10 young people gathered at the train station. They were about to start a winter hiking trip to Ural Mountain in the northern Urals. These were not amateurs, they were experienced hikers, some students and some graduates, all members of the Ural Polytechnic Institute Hiking Club. Let me introduce them. Igor Dyatlov, age 23. The leader, a 5th-year engineering student and an experienced hiker. This was his idea, the route, the plan, everything. Zinaida Kolmogorova, age 22, an economics student nicknamed Zina. Tough as nails, she had completed multiple challenging expeditions. Lyudmila Dubinina, age 20, an economics student nicknamed Lyuda. Passionate about hiking, she always kept a diary. Alexander Kolovatov, age 24, a quiet and brilliant physics student, the science guy of the group. Rustem Slobodin, age 23, an athletic engineering graduate and close friend of Igor. Yuri Yudin, age 21, an economics student who turned back early due to illness. He would be the only survivor, not because he escaped, but because he never reached the mountain. Yuri Doroshenko, age 21, an engineering student nicknamed Georgy. He always cracked jokes and was the comedian of the group. Yuri Krivonishenko, age 23, an engineering graduate who worked at a secret nuclear facility, a detail that would be significant later. Nikolai Thibault Brignol, age 23, an engineering student of French ancestry, strong and reliable. Semyon Zolotaryov, age 37, the oldest, an experienced mountaineer and World War II veteran with strange tattoos. He joined the group at the last minute, and some speculated he was a spy. Originally, there were 10 people, but Yuri Yudin got sick early in the journey and turned back on January 28th. That choice saved his life. 9 continued on, and none would return alive. On January 27th, the group took a train and then a truck to the last inhabited settlement, Vizhai. The next day, they started their trek. The plan was straightforward: trek to Ural Mountain, about 10 days away. They aimed to plant a flag at the summit and return, reporting to the sports club by February 12th. This hike was classified as a Category 3, the most difficult, but all of them were qualified. Yuri Yudin turned back that day due to joint pain. He said goodbye to his friends and took a group photograph, the last photo of all 9 alive together. Later, he recalled, "I remember each of them. I remember their faces. I didn't know I'd never see them again." On January 31st, the group reached the Highland Zone's edge. They left some food and equipment in a labaz, a forest shelter, to retrieve on their way back. They were in high spirits as their diaries showed excitement, jokes, and songs. Typical expedition activities. On February 1st, they began their ascent toward Ural. The weather got worse, with snow and wind, leading to reduced visibility. Igor made a crucial decision. Instead of crossing the pass and setting up camp on the other side, where there was more shelter, he decided to camp on the slope of a mountain called Kolatsiakl. Kolatsiakl means dead mountain in the local Mansi language. The indigenous Mansi people regarded it as sacred and cursed, avoiding the area. But Igor either didn't know this or didn't care. Around 5 p.m., they started to set up camp on the slope at about 1,100 meters elevation. The temperature dropped to -25 to -30 degrees Celsius, and the winds were strong and intensifying. They pitched their tent, had dinner, and wrote in their diaries. Lyuda wrote, "It's hard to imagine such comfort on the ridge, with a piercing wind hundreds of kilometers from human settlements." Rustam penned a joke about the cold in his diary. Everything seemed normal. They prepared for sleep, 9 people sharing one tent. Then something happened. Something so horrifying that it drove experienced hikers to rip open their tent from the inside and flee into the freezing night. February 12, 1959. Igor's group was supposed to report back to the sports club. They didn't. First, nobody panicked. Mountain expeditions often run late. Weather delays, route changes, normal stuff. But by February 20th, families started demanding answers. The families contacted the Institute. The Institute contacted authorities. And on February 20th, a search and rescue operation was launched. Search teams, volunteer students, police, military, even airplanes. They all headed to the northern Urals, February 26, 1959. The search team found the campsite, and what they found made no sense. The tent was still standing, partially covered in snow, but it had been cut open from the inside. Long slashes through the canvas, like someone had desperately tried to escape. Inside the tent, all their belongings, shoes, coats, food, supplies, everything neatly arranged. But the hikers? Gone. Outside the tent, footprints leading down the slope toward the forest, about 1.5 kilometers away. The footprints showed something strange. Most were barefoot or in socks, some in one boot, in -30-degree weather. They weren't walking calmly. The footprints showed they were running. The search team followed the footprints. Part 4. The Bodies. February 27th. At the edge of the forest, near a large cedar tree, they found the first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko, the 2 Yuris. Both were shoeless, wearing only underwear, frozen solid. Near them, the cedar tree. Branches were broken up to 5 meters high, like someone had climbed it, frantically. Skin from their hands was found on the bark. They had been trying to climb, to see something, or escape something. At the base of the tree, the remains of a small fire. They had tried to start a fire, but it wasn't enough. March 1st, 3 more bodies found, between the cedar tree and the tent, spread out over 300 to 600 meters. Igor Dyatlov, found 300 meters from the cedar, face down, arms spread, like he was trying to crawl back to the tent. Zenaida Kolmogorova, found 330 meters from the cedar, also trying to return to the tent. Rustam Slobodin, found 480 meters from the cedar, same direction. All 3 were better dressed than the 2 Yuris, but still inadequate for the weather. All 3 had died of hypothermia. But here's the strange part. Rustam had a skull fracture. Not severe enough to kill him immediately, but enough to cause serious trauma. So now 5 bodies recovered, but 4 still missing. The search continued. 2 months passed. Snow started melting. May 4th, 1959. Search dogs led rescuers to a ravine about 75 meters from the cedar tree. Under 4 meters of snow, They found the remaining 4 bodies: Lyudmila Dubinina, Semyon Zolotaryov, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, Alexander Kolevatov. They were better dressed than the others. Some were wearing clothes from the others who had died first, like they had tried to salvage warmth. They had built a den in the snow, laid down branches, tried to shelter. But what happened to them was not hypothermia. The autopsy results were horrifying. Lyudmila Dubinina, missing her tongue, missing her eyes, missing parts of her facial tissue, massive chest fractures, ribs broken, heart hemorrhaged. Semyon Zolotaryov, massive chest trauma, ribs broken, eyes missing. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, massive skull fracture, like he'd been hit with a club. The force required to cause these injuries. The medical examiner said it was equivalent to a high-speed car crash, but there were no external wounds, no cuts, no bruises, just massive internal damage. The examiner said, "These are injuries you'd expect from a severe car accident, but there's no external trauma. I cannot explain this." And here's the final disturbing detail. Some of their clothes tested positive for radiation, high levels of radioactive contamination. The Soviet authorities launched a criminal investigation, case number 1959-0001. Lead investigator Lev Ivanov. He examined the scene, interviewed witnesses, studied the evidence, and he found things that made no sense. The tent was cut from the inside. Why would experienced hikers destroy their only shelter and flee into deadly cold? Massive internal trauma, but no external wounds. How? Why were some clothes radioactive? Lyuda's tongue and eyes were missing, not torn by animals, surgically removed almost. Multiple witnesses in the area reported seeing strange orange lights in the sky that night. Glowing orbs, moving erratically. The military was conducting missile tests in the region, but they denied any tests that night. When the cameras were developed, one photo showed something strange. A blurry, glowing object in the dark sky. What was it? Lev Ivanov interviewed local Mansi people. They said they saw fire orbs in the sky that night. He investigated, he dug, he asked questions. And then in May 1959, he was told to close the case. Orders from above. The official conclusion: the hikers died due to a compelling natural force. What force? They didn't say. The case was classified, the files were sealed. The area was closed to hikers for 3 years. Years later, in the 1990s, Lev Ivanov gave an interview. He said, "I knew the truth. We all did. But we were ordered to cover it up. There were things in those mountains that we were not allowed to talk about." The theories: for 65 years, people have tried to explain what happened on Dead Mountain. Here are the main theories people have considered. Theory 1. This is the most widely accepted theory. An avalanche struck the tent, causing everyone to panic and run away. Problems? No evidence of an avalanche at the scene. The tent was still standing. An avalanche would have buried it. Experienced hikers would know how to react to an avalanche. They wouldn't flee half naked. Avalanches don't explain the internal injuries with no external wounds. Avalanches don't explain radiation. Theory 2. Some scientists suggest that wind patterns in the mountains created infrasound, low-frequency sound waves that cause panic, dread, and hallucinations. The hikers experienced mass panic, fled the tent, and died of hypothermia and injuries from falls. Problems? Doesn't explain the radiation. Doesn't explain the massive internal trauma. Doesn't explain missing tongues and eyes. Theory 3. The Soviet military was testing weapons in the area. Missiles, parachute mines, or thermobaric bombs. A weapon exploded near the tent. The blast wave caused the internal injuries. The hikers fled in panic. Evidence supporting this: the orange lights in the sky. Yuri Krivonishenko worked at a nuclear facility. Radiation on clothes. The government cover-up. Problems? If it was a military accident, why were the bodies spread out over such distances? Why would the military allow a search party to find the evidence? Theory 4. A known phenomenon. In final stages of hypothermia, people feel extremely hot and start removing clothes. This explains why they were undressed. Problems? Doesn't explain why they fled the tent in the first place. Doesn't explain the internal injuries. Doesn't explain the radiation or missing soft tissue. Theory 5. The Mansi people attacked them for trespassing on sacred land. Problems? The Mansi were peaceful, no history of violence, no evidence of a struggle. The injuries don't match an attack by humans. The Mansi themselves helped with the search and were horrified by the deaths. Theory 6. UFOs, Yetis, paranormal entities, government experiments with unknown technology. Some people point to the glowing orbs in the sky, the radiation, the strange injuries, the missing soft tissue, the government cover-up. Problems. No concrete evidence, highly speculative. But it's the only theory that explains everything. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the case, 60 years later. They conducted new studies, computer simulations, avalanche models. Their conclusion in 2020: a small snow avalanche caused by the hikers cutting into the slope. The wind and snow then covered the evidence. Panic caused them to flee. The public reaction? Nobody believed it. The evidence still doesn't fit. In 2021, a Swiss study tried to recreate the injuries using computer models. They concluded that a delayed snow slab avalanche could have caused the chest trauma. But it still doesn't explain everything. The last survivor's words. Yuri Yudin, the only survivor because he turned back early, spent his entire life trying to understand what happened to his friends. He gave countless interviews. He said, "I've heard every theory, avalanche, military, UFOs, everything. But I knew these people. I knew how experienced they were. Something extraordinary happened that night, something that terrified them so much that they chose to die in the cold rather than stay in that tent. I think about them every day. I see their faces. I wonder what they saw, what they felt, what made them run." Yuri Yudin died in 2013. He never got answered. Let me tell you the details that keep me up at night. 1. The tent. It was cut from the inside. Multiple long slashes, frantic, desperate. These were experienced hikers. If there was danger outside, they would barricade themselves in, not cut their way out. So the danger was inside, or something made them believe the tent itself was the danger. 2. The footprints. They walked in an organized line down the slope, not scattered, not panicked running. They were walking calmly at first, like they were ordered to leave, or following something. 3. The cedar tree. Someone climbed that tree 5 meters up, in freezing weather, barefoot. Why? To see something, to escape something, to signal someone. 4. The den. The 4 in the ravine had time to build a shelter. They laid branches, they took clothes from the dead, so they weren't in immediate danger. They were trying to survive. Then something crushed them with the force of a car crash. 5. Lyuda's missing tongue. The medical examiner noted it was removed while she was still alive. There was blood in her stomach. She had swallowed it. How and why? 6. The radiation. Only some clothes were radioactive, specifically clothes from Yuri Krivonishenko and Semyon Zolotaryov. Yuri worked at a nuclear facility. Had he brought contaminated clothes? Or was he exposed to something on the mountain? 7. The last photo. It shows darkness and a small glowing object in the upper right corner. What is it? A light? A flare? Something else? That photo was taken the night they died. So what happened on Dead Mountain on the night of February 1st, 1959? We don't know. But here's what we do know. 9 experienced hikers died in unexplainable circumstances. Something made them flee their tent in terror. Some suffered injuries consistent with extreme trauma. There were strange lights in the sky. There was radiation. The Soviet government covered it up. I think something happened that combined multiple factors. Perhaps there was a military test nearby. Perhaps the hikers saw something they shouldn't have. Perhaps the trauma was from a blast wave or pressure wave. Perhaps the government knew exactly what happened and classified it. But the missing tongues, the radiation, the organized footprints, the fact that they chose death over staying in the tent, something terrified them beyond reason. And that's something we may never truly understand. Imagine being in that tent, warm, safe, with your friends, and then something happens, something so terrifying that you'd rather face certain death in the freezing cold. What could do that? What could make you cut through your only shelter and run into the darkness? The DYATLOV Pass Incident. 9 lives lost, 1 mountain, and a mystery that will haunt us forever. If you found this story fascinating and terrifying, let me know. Should I cover more real unsolved mysteries like this? Comment below. What do you think happened? Avalanche, military, or something we can't explain? Stay curious, stay safe. And if you ever go hiking in remote mountains, first think twice about where you pitch your tent. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We will return soon with another real terrifying tale that will keep you up at night. Take care. And remember, some mysteries are never meant to be solved.